Hi, welcome to Tools, Techniques, and Mental Models. Today we're going to be looking at PESTEL. PESTEL is an economic tool that businesses use to determine how the external environment may be impacting them as a business. It's used by all kinds of businesses, particularly new businesses, businesses entering into new areas, or where external changes are occurring that can impact a business and its current operations. It's something that should be reviewed and looked at from an ongoing basis because there's always these kind of things going on in the external environment. And in this series, Tools, Techniques, and Mental Models, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for frameworks. We're looking for things that we can utilize, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, that can help us better understand what's going on, which will help us in turn to better develop strategies and goals and to be able to really be effective at responding and taking advantage of those changes. It's not necessarily that you always have to look at the external changes like a negative. You can look at the external changes like they're presenting opportunities. And the truth of the matter is, as a business, if you are more adept at seeing things before your competitors are, that can develop a definitive competitive advantage for you going forward. So as I said, it is a very useful tool. There's other tools too that are similar in nature. Two that come to mind, there's more than that, but two that come to mind are Porter's 5 Forces and SWOT, Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. And we'll look at those in different videos as well. But they all can be used in combination as well. It's not like they're mutually exclusive. You can take information from one and then put it into the other framework and then go to work on it and see how it best suits you and your particular business. Or you personally. You know what? You can apply a lot of these tools even for yourself in your career. You can be looking at, I'm doing this particular thing in my career, and these things are happening outside. Now, do I just sit back and ignore them and then 5-10 years down the road find out that my skill set is obsolete? Or do I pay attention to them and I try to figure out and evaluate where my best opportunity is to spend some effort upgrading in my skills? So just as it works for a business, it works for individuals as well. And I would keep that in mind with a lot of tools that we talk about in the areas of project management and business management. They can also be very often equally applied to personal management, career management, etc. You'll find that's a useful way of viewing things. So PESTEL, it's just an acronym, and that makes it easier to remember. Supposedly, if you can spell it okay. I think I sometimes have a little bit of dyslexia going on with the E and the L at the end, but at any rate, P is for political. E is for economic, S is for social, T is for technological, E is for environmental, and L is for legal. So after you use it a few times, you kind of get them. You might get the economic and the environmental reversed. That doesn't really matter in any way, shape, or form, but it does give you a good idea of the external things that are going on outside the company. Because when we look at business, there's two areas we can look at. We can look at internally, and we have a lot more locus of control, able to control what's going on internally in the business than we do externally. It's not like we're big enough that we can change whole marketplaces necessarily. Some will argue that some companies might be getting to that stage. You know, you've got like an Amazon and that sort of thing, and if it becomes more of a monopoly than an oligopoly, that becomes a problem. But really, even the biggest companies in the world are beholden to what's going on in their external environment, and particularly ones like I just mentioned, because they have to be concerned with things like the legal. And if you get too big, then you start getting regulatory authorities and politics and social pushes that wants to either separate them out, like what happened to the large oil companies at the turn of the 20th century, like 1900, when all of a sudden they were too big and they basically were broken down into smaller businesses when they started to get that there was no competition. So the external environment is definitely an impact, whether you're a very small company or whether you're the biggest of the big. And PESTEL is helpful. So looking at it, let's look at each one, and then we'll look at it how a company kind of looks at things. In my background, I'm a professor of construction management, and I look at things from a business perspective and a project management perspective. And so if we think about political, there's a lot more points than this, but I threw up a few of these points just to sort of establish the things that you need to think about. But you can think about all kinds of politics depending on what your country is of origin and how the impacts may affect it. You can also think, no matter what country you're in, how political things like trade agreements and trade wars go on between different countries. Being in Canada very recently, we had a lot of going back and forth with a North American trade agreement between Mexico and the United States. And you can understand different leaders in the different countries have an impact on how this actually looks. And perhaps there might be tariffs and pushbacks for different goods. And if there's tariffs, all of a sudden, you know, if I'm in construction as an example, it might drastically impact the cost of steel that would be imported or exported, depending which way that you're looking at it. So there's all these kind of things that can put some instability in place. And businesses in general, from a political point of view, they don't like instability because that reduces predictability. If you can't really predict what the future is, it's hard to invest in things and to grow your businesses because you're too much concerned about taking risks because you're not sure. They're not calculated risks. There's too much unknowns in there. Taxation, same thing. You know, it can be a very political thing, and some companies they look at, well, can we do some different things so that we're not taxed at such a high rate, or can we move our business's head office to a different country? These kind of things have a political aspect. Or if you're thinking of doing work in a foreign country, there might be a lot of corruption that goes on that may make it, again, difficult for you to do the ethical or the right thing with your business. So that might dissuade you from wanting to work in one country or another country based on those types of environments. But political, that would be taken at all those aspects is important. Stability being a big one. Economic, well, just think of it. You're a business, and how dramatically are you affected by economic changes? So if there's a recession, how is your business impacted? Some businesses are pretty resilient during a recession. You know, businesses that sell goods at a low cost, retail stores that way, they can be pretty positive during a recession. On the other hand, a high-priced restaurant might have a lot of customers that all of a sudden are cutting back, or a travel lodge might have fewer guests. That would dramatically impact it. Construction projects, from a recession point of view. Do I want to invest in a brand new house right now when I'm kind of worried about my job? That would be an impact. Interest rates, if interest rates are going up. And a lot of these points too, by the way, they're not mutually exclusive. It's not just only under the economic. They usually kind of work together. You know, you have a recession, and what does government do? Well, they might cut interest rates as a result of the recession. So it just depends on the responses and the interactions that are going on. Inflation, if pricing is going up a lot, government might not like a boom, and because things get overheated and usually it doesn't end well. So the governments tend to prefer trying to have something that's going at a much more even keel or a slow rise in it than going straight up, because usually there's an overcorrection that takes place. So the economic aspects have a great deal to do with it. Me being in the construction sector, employment rates. Well, if you're in a booming economy, you know what? That's great for the business side, typically, but it's bad for getting really good resources, getting the best trades, hiring really good people. They're scarce. There's a lot of scarcity that goes on in those marketplaces. So then you got to look at other things that you do in your business. How do you best retain those people when you do hire them? And what kind of business do you want to have that attracts the best people during those economic times? So it feeds into your strategy, how you develop your strategy. Social. Well, what is the community? What is the mood of the public in certain areas? Where are things moving? You know, if we're moving towards electric vehicles and we're moving towards having a low carbon footprint because of the dramatic climate change that is taking place, those all have social influences when people are saying, you know, we can't keep doing this, this is what we want. Or when you are able to see that the general public is kind of put off by something, they're more ready to make a move, and that can be very, very helpful in you innovating a new product or perhaps being in more the leading edge of those kind of dramatic changes that are taking place. In construction, you can think about things like net zero housing, houses that are constructed that consume as much electricity as they produce. Building codes, regulatory, as we'll see, are moving in that direction, but that doesn't mean you can't be ahead of the curve with some of those things and really have the systems in place so that it really becomes full out. You really have developed a competitive advantage for a period of time. Nothing is forever, it's for a period of time, but that's what monitoring and looking at the external environment does for you as a business. So all these kind of things, lifestyle, attitudes, you know, coming out of a global pandemic, people have realized that there's a lot of value in their homes. So they're investing in their homes and they're looking at their backyards and outdoor areas a little bit differently, and they're investing in that. So there's a lot of growth in certain areas, home offices, technological uses for the houses that they didn't think of in the same way before the pandemic. So one thing leads to maybe a shutdown, a lot of sort of negative activity for a lot of businesses. The external environment, again, would be looking at that. And then it does provide opportunities in other areas. So social is definitely that aspect. An aging population, demographics. If you have a lot of baby boomers that are going into their seniors years, that can provide different opportunities as well. That can maybe mean that at long-term care facilities, and a different kind of long-term care facility than some of the problems that we had during the pandemic can be exposed looking back on that. And that institutes how companies will view that information, and many companies will innovate out of that information. Other companies may do nothing at their peril and find out that they should have done something, and then they may be gone in a few years. I always think of the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, and some of the companies that were in Good to Great are gone. It's how good are you as a business recently? If you're a great business 10 years ago, but you really haven't been innovating and changing and adjusting, at some point you're obsolete. And so that's what PESTEL really is helpful at doing, is ensuring that you're not obsolete. You're looking at the technological changes that are taking place. Some people have been able to influence that. I think Tesla and Elon Musk did a great job of getting people to start thinking about electrical vehicles. It's not like it wouldn't have come. I don't think that's the case. Electrical vehicles goes back to the early 1900s, but definitely moved it ahead many, many years from where it was. And so that cat is out of the box, so to speak, because all of the major automotive manufacturers are now on that path. So originally they were kind of the lone wolf, so to speak, and now there's a whole pack that is leading that technological change. And that's leading to advances, more innovation, and it's provided a lot of opportunities for many people in those areas. I don't think it's great for the oil and gas industry, but that's what happens. And it is great for the environment, though. So you have these technological changes. Again, I'm trying to show you the interrelationship between the different ones. You have social change that helps to people to innovate technological. They may not even know what they want yet, but you see a certain social change, and that may provide you with an opportunity to innovate, create, and influence in those particular areas. But definitely that would also be threats to many sectors. I think of in teaching, threats. Some of the teachers that I know, they kind of didn't really get on the bus with the changes that we went online with so many courses and classes. And some of them are a lot younger than I am. And I'm thinking, the world is changing in a lot of ways. You have to at least be able to pivot and adjust and go back and forth. For sure, but definitely see if you don't, that is a threat. And how can you do it better? And how can you as an individual, so I said individuals and as a business, how you can utilize that information. I think if you're not looking at the technological changes that have been taking place and how fast they take place, then you're missing something, because the rate of change has increased substantially over the last 30 years. So where things would change maybe over a generation or a 20-25 year period, maybe in the 1900s, they're now changing at a rate of like 5 years to 7 years, and even shorter in some areas. So that you've got to keep in mind as a business, because you don't have as much time or opportunity to factor that in. And if you want to think about companies that didn't really look at that kind of change, Kodak, Blockbuster, Kmart, Sears, those are just some of the ones that come to mind pretty quickly, that they weren't as quick to respond. And then somebody basically outsmarted them, whether it was Walmart and logistics, whether it was the whole digital camera side of things. Those were some of, or Netflix, those are some of the things that occurred. And they didn't occur in one day or in 1 year, but there was enough time that if they'd made the shift earlier, they could have much better positioned themselves. It's easy to look in hindsight, but for sure, that's what happens to businesses that go from good to great to gone. The environmental we talked about, and climate change, and weather, and your location. You know, some countries, for better or worse, aren't as negatively hit so far with climate change, and others are dramatically hit, and some areas are dramatically hit, like parts of Australia and parts of California have really been hit with the forest fire aspects. And so these are things that need to be considered in those areas, but it's a global issue. There are, though, a lot of opportunities to, as a business, to better position yourself to do more good for the world, and quite frankly, it's going to be very much in need. And that's where a lot of opportunities are. No matter what kind of business you're in, you should be thinking about that aspect and looking at it. Well, of course, the legal, again, it depends on your country, but we do get into a lot of bureaucracies, and there's a lot of risks that are involved with various elements. In the construction industry, we think a lot about health and safety and working conditions. Human rights has become a huge issue, and making sure that we're operating in an ethical and moral way that satisfies requirements. But there's laws. Business should be doing this anyways, but there is laws that helps to protect individuals, because if there weren't those laws, there unfortunately would be a lot of businesses that would be non-compliant. And this is one of the things that you really have to look at that, and you have to understand where they're at and how these changes can impact your business, and then you can adjust and you can shift and you can ensure that you're complying. And ensuring that you're mitigating your risks effectively, so that you're making sure that your business operates effectively and legally. So understanding those kind of things in the external environment, and in the area of legal too, protecting copyright and patent laws. If there's new things that you're developing or new innovations that you're working on, that becomes a big deal as well. So PESTEL, if we take a look, I've gotten into using mind maps for a lot of things, and I find it's good to sort of look at things from that perspective. If we look at the external environment, most things, and again, there's different combinations. You can look it up on the web. There There's different abbreviations that come up. I'd say PESTEL is probably the most widely known and understood, but there's ones that have even more acronyms on them that separate some of these out. But political, economic, social, technological, environment, legal. So you should think of that as everything external to your business. But we should also think about our business. And if we put it into a bigger context, you know, a successful business in the heart of it, excuse me, has all of these areas that we think about. Purpose, financials, marketing, your people and your culture, your operations. So you have all these things that are like spokes on a wheel, and they all have to each individual one has to run well, but they have to integrate with each other really well. We don't want individual silos that don't integrate. So that's why a mind map's kind of helpful to see that sort of integration that needs to take place. But as a business, you really do have to look at the external environment and what's going on in the external environment and how you can respond to that. So you really should be thinking about the external environment and how things might be impacting your business. So what's going on over there and what can we do about it? Because these things that were just talked about have influence and impacts on all of these areas. Of course, in our purpose and our business strategy, if we're going to make a change, what change should we do? And we've got to be careful how we decipher this information. You know, you don't just jump on things because it's the new shiny object that's appearing, but you do have to look at those things. Taxation, how would that affect financials as an example? Business strategy, well, climate change. If I'm a construction business, is there areas that we can really shore up on and lead the way in, such as I mentioned, net zero construction. Maybe there's certifications that are available. Maybe that's going to impact our marketing of basically how we promote ourselves, how we position ourselves as a business. And our people, well, if in the economic side things are booming, how do we hire the best people? How do we retain the best people? What's going to make our business more attractive than other businesses in that framework? Or from a climate change point of view, do we have people that are skilled in LEED certification? Do we have anybody that is LEED certification certified? So then maybe we have to hire some people in that area if that's where we're shifting to. And our operations, technological changes, that's going to impact our methodologies, our technologies that we use. That'll have an impact on our productivity. And of course, then that ties to our financials. If we're more productive, maybe we can be more profitable. We can have a higher return on our investments that we make. All of these things integrate into each other. And that's how PESTEL can help a business. And that's how you can apply it. And that's why PESTEL Analysis is an important business tool to utilize. So I'm Tom Stephenson. I hope you enjoyed this short video on PESTEL. If you did, please click the subscribe button. I have many videos under the Tools, Techniques, Mental Models series, but I also have many construction-related courses that I posted on YouTube as well. And you can check my playlists on the YouTube channel. If you want to see new videos as they come out, click the notifications and click like and leave a comment. If there's something that you've used in a certain way and how you've applied it, I'd love to hear from you. So have a wonderful day and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.